The blade caught the chandelier's light for a split second before plunging toward the woman in the Armani suit. In that frozen moment, as screams erupted through the packed restaurant, a disheveled man from the corner table moved with lethal precision, throwing himself between death and its target. Blood splattered across white tablecloths as CEO Victoria Chen gasped, realizing a complete stranger had just taken a knife meant for her heart. But the real shock came minutes later when she discovered who this man really was and the devastating secret that had destroyed his life 3 years ago. Stay with me until the end of this incredible story and comment your city below so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The rain hammered against the windows of La Bernardine, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, creating rivers of distortion that turned the city lights into abstract paintings. Inside, the atmosphere hummed with the controlled energy of power lunches and million-dollar deals being sealed over aged wine and perfectly seared steaks. Crystal glasses caught the warm glow of custom chandeliers and the soft murmur of conversation, mixed with the gentle clink of silverware against china plates worth more than most people's monthly rent. Marcus Riley sat alone at a corner table, the cheapest entree on the menu untouched before him. His weathered hands, scarred from years he didn't talk about anymore, wrapped around a glass of water. No ice, a habit from places where ice was a luxury you couldn't trust. His daughter Emma had insisted he needed to get out more, needed to stop living like a ghost in their small Brooklyn apartment. "Dad, you can't keep punishing yourself forever," she'd said that morning, her 15-year-old eyes holding wisdom that broke his heart. So here he was, using a gift card his sister had given him for his birthday, feeling like an imposter among the Manhattan elite. He watched them without seeming to another old habit that would never die. The investment banker at table 3 was nervous about something, probably a deal going south, based on how he kept checking his phone. The couple near the window were on the verge of divorce, separate checks already requested, wedding rings catching light, but no longer catching glances. And at the center table, the one reserved for only the most important guests, sat Victoria Chen. Marcus knew who she was. Everyone in New York knew Victoria Chen, CEO of Nexus Technologies, the woman who'd built a billion-dollar empire from a failed startup she'd bought for pennies on the dollar. Forbes had just named her one of the most powerful women in tech. She commanded the room without trying her presence, like gravity-bending conversations toward her, even when she wasn't participating in them. She was dining with 3 men in identical black suits, lawyers, or board members, Marcus guessed, based on their rigid postures and the stack of documents between the oysters and wine. Victoria's own security detail, 2 men who looked like they'd been carved from granite, stood at a discreet distance near the restaurant's entrance. They were good professional, but they were watching the wrong angles. The kitchen door, for instance, had been opening and closing with unusual frequency for the last 10 minutes. The new waiter, the one with nervous hands and eyes that moved too quickly, had passed their table 4 times without actually serving anything. Marcus felt the familiar tingle at the base of his skull, the same sensation that had saved his life in Kabul and Mosul, and a dozen other places where death came dressed in ordinary clothes. He shifted slightly in his seat, angling his body toward the center of the room. His hand moved to his water glass, but his muscles were already coiling, preparing. "More bread, sir." A waitress appeared at his elbow. Genuine been working here for years based on how she moved through the tables. "No, thank you," Marcus replied, his voice gravelly from disuse. He rarely spoke to anyone except Emma these days. The kitchen door swung open again. This time the nervous waiter emerged carrying a covered silver tray, moving with sudden purpose toward Victoria's table. But something was wrong with his gait, too stiff, too direct. His free hand was clenched at his side, and there was a bulge under his vest that hadn't been there before. Time dilated the way it always did when violence was about to explode into the world. Marcus saw the waiter's hand disappear under the tray. He saw Victoria's security detail still focused on the main entrance, completely unaware. He saw Victoria herself signing something with an elegant Mont Blanc pen, exposed and vulnerable. The knife appeared like a magic trick, 8 inches of serrated steel that had been taped under the serving tray. The waiter, not a waiter at all. Marcus realized, lunged forward with practiced motion, the blade aimed at Victoria's chest, his face contorted with a rage that spoke of personal vendetta rather than professional assassination. Marcus moved. The distance between his table and Victoria's was 15 feet. He covered it in less than 2 seconds, his body remembering what his mind had tried to forget. The other diners hadn't even processed what was happening, yet their brains still trying to reconcile the violent motion with the civilized setting. Marcus's shoulder connected with the attacker's ribs just as the knife began its descent. The impact sent both men crashing into the adjacent table, sending a $1,000 bottle of wine spinning through the air. The knife skittered across the floor and Marcus found himself on top of the attacker, his hands automatically finding the pressure points that would immobilize without killing. "Nobody move," he barked, his command voice returning like an old friend. The authority in it froze everyone in place, even Victoria's security detail, who were finally rushing forward, hands reaching for weapons. The attacker struggled beneath him, younger and stronger, but without Marcus's training. "You don't understand," the man screamed. "She destroyed everything, my father's company, 40 years of work gone because of her greed." Marcus applied more pressure, careful not to crush the man's windpipe. "Not like this," he said quietly. "Whatever she did, this isn't the answer." The restaurant erupted into chaos. Diners scrambled for exits, some pulling out phones to record, others simply running. Broken glass crunched under expensive shoes. A woman's scream cut through the air like another blade. Victoria's security detail finally reached them, roughly pulling Marcus off the attacker, not yet understanding he wasn't the threat. "Wait, stop!" Victoria's voice cut through the pandemonium. She stood behind her overturned chair, her designer suit splattered with wine that looked disturbingly like blood in the low light. Her eyes were fixed on Marcus, who was now being pressed against the wall by one of her guards. "He saved me. Let him go." The guard hesitated, then released Marcus, who straightened his worn jacket with dignity. Blood seeped through a tear in his sleeve where the knife had caught him during the struggle. He hadn't even noticed. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The attacker lay on the floor now, restrained with zip ties. Someone had produced sobbing about bankruptcy and suicide, and a father who'd died of a heart attack after losing everything. "You're hurt," Victoria said, approaching Marcus with a grace that seemed impossible given what had just happened. Her hand reached toward his bleeding arm, but he stepped back. "It's nothing. Surface wound." Marcus's eyes swept the room professionally. "You should move to a secure location. He might not have been working alone." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've done this before." It wasn't a question. Marcus didn't answer. The police burst through the entrance, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The next few minutes were a blur of badges and questions, and paramedics insisting on examining his arm despite his protests. "I need to go," Marcus said, trying to move toward the exit. "My daughter's expecting me." "You're not going anywhere until you give a statement," a detective informed him, notebook already out. "You're a hero, buddy. Probably saved this lady's life." Marcus flinched at the word hero. Heroes didn't do what he'd done. Heroes didn't carry the weight he carried. Victoria hadn't moved away. She stood close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and subtle, watching him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus Riley." She pulled out her phone, typing quickly. Marcus saw her eyes widen slightly as she read whatever came up on the screen. She knew how to research people quickly, of course she did. In her position, information was armor. "You're not just anyone, are you?" she said quietly so the police couldn't hear. "Sergeant Major Marcus Riley, former Executive Protection Specialist, Army Special Forces, decorated veteran, multiple commendations for valor." Her voice dropped even lower. "Discharged 3 years ago after the Morrison incident." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I need to call my daughter." "The senator's son," Victoria continued, her voice neutral, but her eyes sharp. "You chose to save the journalist instead. The senator's son died and they hung you out to dry for making what they called the wrong choice. Please." The word came out harsher than Marcus intended. "I just need to go home." Victoria studied him for a long moment, then turned to the detective. "Officer, Mr. Riley has been through enough tonight. I'll have my lawyers handle any statements needed. He's free to go." The detective started to protest, but Victoria's look silenced him. Money and power had their privileges, and she wielded both like weapons. "My driver will take you home," she told Marcus. "I can take the subway. With that arm and covered in blood, you'll terrify everyone on the train." She pulled out a business card, pressing it into his uninjured hand. "I owe you a debt I can never fully repay, but I'd like to try." Marcus looked at the card without reading it. You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone would do. No, Victoria said firmly. You did what only someone like you could do. The way you moved, the way you assessed the threat before anyone else even knew there was danger, that's not normal. That's training. That's instinct. That's who you are even after they tried to destroy you for it. The weight of the past 3 years suddenly felt crushing. Marcus had spent every day since his discharge trying to disappear to become nobody to atone for the choice that had cost a young man his life. 22 years old, the senator's son had been. The same age Marcus had been when he'd first put on the uniform. The journalist had 3 kids, Marcus said suddenly, not sure why he was explaining himself to this stranger. The senator's son was single, no dependents. In that split second with bullets flying and only time to save one, he trailed off the memory of that hellish night in Baghdad flooding back. You made a choice based on math, Victoria said. 3 orphans versus 1 grieving parent. The senator didn't see it that way. Neither did the media. Neither did the army in the end. The army was wrong. Victoria's voice held a conviction that surprised him. The media was wrong. The senator was grieving and looking for someone to blame. But you made an impossible choice in an impossible situation, and you've been punishing yourself for it ever since. Marcus's phone buzzed. Emma texting to ask if he was okay, if he was enjoying his dinner. She'd seen something on social media about an incident at La Bernardine. Kids and their phones' news traveled faster than light these days. I really do need to go, he said. Victoria stepped aside, but not before saying, check your bank account tomorrow, Mr. Riley. Consider it a consulting fee for tonight's security services. I don't want your money. It's not charity. You provided a service, a valuable one. My life, to be exact. That has a price whether you like it or not. She paused, then added, your daughter Emma Wright. 15 years old, honors student at Brooklyn Tech. Marcus tensed. How do you... I told you I researched quickly. Don't worry. I'm not threatening or stalking. I'm just thorough. She wants to go to MIT, doesn't she? Computer science, like her late mother. The mention of Sarah made Marcus's chest tighten. His wife had been dead for 5 years now, cancer taking her just before everything else fell apart. Please don't bring my family into this. I'm not bringing them into anything. I'm simply observing that a girl that brilliant deserves every opportunity, and her father's sacrifice both 3 years ago and tonight shouldn't be what stands in her way. Before Marcus could respond, Victoria was walking away, her security detail forming a protective diamond around her. The restaurant looked like a war zone, overturned tables, broken glass wine, and food splattered across the imported marble floor. The attacker was being loaded into a police car, still rambling about justice and revenge. Marcus stood alone in the wreckage, his arm throbbing, his shirt ruined feeling more visible than he had in 3 years. The other diners who hadn't fled were staring at him, some with admiration, others with curiosity. A few held up phones recording him, and he knew that by morning his face would be all over the internet. So much for disappearing. The manager approached nervously. Sir, your meal. Of course there's no charge, and we'd like to... Forget it, Marcus said wearily. Just forget all of it. He walked out into the rain, letting it wash the blood from his hands. The city moved around him with its usual indifference, taxis honking, people hurrying past with umbrellas and purpose. But Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the grip he'd maintained on himself for 3 long years. His phone rang. Emma. Dad? Are you okay? There's videos everywhere. Someone said you stopped a killer. I'm fine, sweetheart, just a misunderstanding that got out of hand. Dad? Her voice held that tone she'd inherited from her mother, the one that said she wasn't buying his deflection. I saw the video. You saved someone's life. You're a hero. That word again. It sat like ash in his mouth. I'm just your dad, Em. Nothing more. You're more than that, and you know it. Mom always said you were the best man she knew, that you'd been a hero long before you met her. Maybe it's time you remembered that. Marcus stopped walking, standing in the middle of the sidewalk as rain soaked through his clothes. When did you get so wise? When you were too busy feeling guilty to notice I was growing up. There was no accusation in her voice, just gentle truth. Come home, Dad. I'll heat up the lasagna. Mrs. Rodriguez's lasagna. The very same. She made extra as always. Marcus smiled despite everything. Their elderly neighbor had been bringing them food twice a week since Sarah died, insisting it was just leftovers, even though she clearly cooked specifically for them. "I'll be home in 30 minutes. Dad, I love you, and I'm proud of you. Mom would be too." The call ended before Marcus could respond. He stood in the rain, letting it mix with the tears he finally allowed to fall. 3 years of self-imposed exile. 3 years of trying to atone for a choice that had no right answer. 3 years of withering away in the shadows. But tonight, muscle memory and instinct had overridden his careful construction of anonymity. Tonight he'd made another choice, thrown himself between death and a stranger, acted without thinking because thinking had become his enemy ever since Baghdad. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Mr. Riley, this is Victoria Chen. I've had time to think during the ride home. What happened tonight wasn't random. That man had been planning this for weeks according to what the police just told me. He'd studied my patterns, knew where I'd be. The only variable he didn't account for was you. I don't believe in fate, but I do believe in opportunity. I'd like to discuss a proposition with you. Not charity, not pity, but a legitimate business offer. My company needs someone with your skills, your instincts. Someone who sees threats before they materialize. Think about it. V." Marcus deleted the message, then retrieved it from his trash folder, then deleted it again. He didn't need that world anymore, the world of protection and security and keeping death at bay. He'd failed at it once, and the cost had been too high. But as he walked home through the rain, he couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had changed something fundamental. The careful walls he'd built were cracking, and through those cracks, light was beginning to seep in. His arm throbbed with each heartbeat, a reminder that he was alive, that he could still feel pain, which meant he could still feel everything else too. For 3 years, he'd been numb, going through the motions of living without actually being alive. Tonight, for those few seconds of violence and choice, he'd been fully present, fully himself. The apartment building loomed before him, a pre-war brick structure that had seen better decades. The elevator was broken again, so he climbed the 5 flights to their unit, each step an effort with the adrenaline finally wearing off. Emma was waiting at the door, her face a mixture of worry and pride. She threw her arms around him, careful of his injured arm, and Marcus held his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, the same brand Sarah had used. "You're soaking wet," Emma said, pulling back. "And you're bleeding through that bandage. The paramedic said it just needs a few stitches. Then we're going to the emergency room after dinner. No arguments." Marcus smiled at his daughter's authoritative tone. "Yes, ma'am." The apartment was small but clean, photos of better days covering most surfaces. Sarah smiled from a dozen frames, her presence still filling the spaces between father and daughter. Emma had her mother's eyes, her mother's determination, her mother's way of seeing through his defenses. As they ate Mrs. Rodriguez's admittedly excellent lasagna, Emma pulled up the videos on her tablet. Marcus tried not to watch, but the footage was everywhere, shot from multiple angles by different diners. In the clips, he moved like a force of nature, precise and deadly, and utterly in control. It was like watching someone he used to know, someone he'd tried to bury. "You look like an action hero," Emma said with a mixture of awe and amusement. "Like one of those guys in Mom's favorite movies." "Your mom liked romantic comedies. She liked action movies too when you weren't around to make fun of how unrealistic they were." Emma's smile faded slightly. "She'd be really proud of you tonight, Dad. You saved someone's life." "I've saved lives before. I've also—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "You've also had to make impossible choices," Emma said, her wisdom beyond her years showing again. "That's what Mom used to say when you had nightmares, that you carried the weight of impossible choices so other people didn't have to." Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her. When had she grown up? When had she become this insightful, compassionate young woman? He'd been so lost in his own guilt that he'd missed so much of her transformation from child to teenager. "I got an email from MIT last week," Emma said, suddenly changing the subject with the careful casualness that meant it was important. "About their summer program for high school students. It's competitive and expensive, but Mrs. Chen at school thinks I have a real shot at getting in." "How expensive?" Emma named a figure that made Marcus wince. It was more than he made in 2 months at his current job working security at a warehouse in Queens. Night shifts, minimum wage, invisible work for an invisible man. We'll figure it out, he said automatically, though he had no idea how. Dad, you don't have to, Yes, I do. Your mother would have wanted you to have every opportunity. So do I. Emma reached across the table and squeezed his hand. We're doing okay, Dad. We're surviving. Surviving isn't enough. You deserve to be thriving. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but this time he recognized the area code. Arlington, Virginia. Military. Marcus Riley. The voice was familiar but unexpected. Colonel James Patterson, his former commanding officer before everything went wrong. Sir, I saw the news. Impressive work tonight, though I'm not surprised. You always did have perfect tactical instincts. What do you want, Colonel? Direct as always. I like that about you, Marcus. I'll be equally direct. There's been movement on your case. The senator died last month, heart attack, if you can believe the irony. His widow wants to meet with you. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Why? She says she's had time to grieve, time to think. She wants to hear your side of what happened that night. She wants to understand why you made the choice you did. It won't change anything. Her son is still dead. No, but it might change how his death is remembered. And it might change your discharge status. There's talk of reviewing the case, possibly upgrading your discharge to honorable. It would restore your benefits, your pension, Emma's college fund. The college fund. Marcus had forgotten about that. Full tuition to any state school for dependents of service members with honorable discharges. It would solve Emma's MIT problem instantly. I'll think about it, Marcus said. Don't think too long. Momentum matters in these things, and tonight's heroics have people remembering who you really are, not just who the media painted you as. The call ended, leaving Marcus staring at his phone like it might explode. 2 opportunities in one night, both offering paths back to the world he'd fled. Who was that? Emma asked. Someone from my past. Someone who might help with our future. Marcus looked at his daughter, at the hope in her eyes that she was trying to hide. She'd been so strong since Sarah's death, since his world imploded, never complaining about their reduced circumstances, never asking why they'd had to leave their nice house in Virginia for this cramped apartment in Brooklyn. Maybe, he admitted. Later at the emergency room, as a tired resident stitched his arm, Marcus found himself thinking about choices. Every life was a series of them, most insignificant, some that changed everything. 3 years ago, he'd made a choice in a split second that had destroyed his career and his reputation. Tonight, he'd made another choice also, in a split second that might have started to rebuild both. But the choice that mattered now wasn't about him. It was about Emma, about giving her the future she deserved. If that meant facing his past, confronting the senator's widow, possibly working for Victoria Chen, then so be it. His phone buzzed one more time. Victoria again. I know you'll probably delete this too, but I wanted you to know I've looked into the Morrison incident. I've read the classified reports. Yes, I have that kind of clearance. You made the right call, Marcus. In that situation with that information, you saved the most lives possible. The journalist you saved has written 3 exposés on government corruption since then, saving countless lives through her reporting. Her 3 children are thriving. You gave them that. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you differently. The offer stands when you're ready. V. This time, Marcus didn't delete the message. Outside the hospital window, New York glittered in the rain-washed darkness. Millions of lights representing millions of lives. Millions of choices being made every second. Marcus had spent 3 years trying to opt out of those choices, to exist without really living to atone through anonymity. But tonight had proven what Emma and Sarah had always known: he wasn't built for the shadows. He was built to stand between danger and the innocent, to make the impossible choices others couldn't, to carry that weight with dignity, even when it threatened to crush him. All done, the resident announced, wrapping his arm with fresh bandages. Try to keep it dry for a few days. You're lucky another inch, and that knife would have hit an artery. Lucky. Marcus almost laughed. Luck had nothing to do with it. Training instinct and 3 years of muscles, remembering what his mind had tried to forget, that's what had saved him. That's what had saved Victoria Chen. As they took a taxi home, Emma had insisted using her babysitting money despite his protests. Marcus made a decision. He would meet with the senator's widow. He would hear what Victoria Chen had to offer. He would stop running from who he was and start running toward who he could be for Emma's sake, if not his own. "Dad," Emma said sleepily, leaning against his shoulder in the back of the cab. "Yeah, sweetheart. I know you think you failed that night in Baghdad, but you didn't. You made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. That's not failure, that's courage. How did you get so smart?" "I had good parents, both of them." Marcus kissed the top of his daughter's head, feeling something shift and settle in his chest. The guilt would never fully leave, he'd carry that weight forever. But maybe, just maybe, he could carry other things too. Hope. Purpose. The possibility of redemption not through hiding, but through action. Tomorrow he would call Victoria Chen. Tomorrow he would start the long journey back to the light. But tonight he held his daughter close and let himself believe for the first time in 3 years that he might deserve a second chance. The city rushed past the taxi windows, endless and indifferent, but for once Marcus didn't feel small within it. He felt like what he'd always been, even in his darkest moments, a protector, a father, a man who stood between chaos and those who needed shielding from it. The rain had stopped by the time they reached their building. The clouds parted, revealing stars that were usually hidden by the city's glow. Marcus helped Emma from the cab, and together they climbed the stairs to their apartment, to their life that was about to change, in ways neither of them could fully imagine. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight was about survival becoming something more, about a knife in the dark that had illuminated a path forward, about a man remembering who he was beneath the weight of who he'd been forced to become. Tonight was about choosing to live again, not just exist. And that, Marcus thought as he tucked his daughter into bed and sat watching over her like he had when she was small, was its own kind of heroism, quiet, unglamorous, but perhaps the most important kind of all. The morning came too quickly, bringing with it a reality Marcus wasn't prepared to face. His phone had been buzzing since 5 a.m. with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Reporters probably, though, some might have been old contacts from his former life. People who'd disappeared when his name became toxic. He let them all go to voicemail while he made Emma breakfast, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy in what was about to become anything but a normal day. "You're famous," Emma said, scrolling through her phone while eating scrambled eggs. "You're trending on Twitter. Someone called you the Ghost Guardian because of how you appeared out of nowhere." Marcus winced. The last thing he wanted was a nickname, especially one that dramatic. "Please tell me you're not reading the comments." "Some of them are actually nice. Look, this one says you're what a real hero looks like, no costume, no glory, just someone doing the right thing when it mattered." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "But Dad, some people are digging into your past. The Morrison thing, it's coming up again." Of course it was. Marcus had known this would happen the moment his face appeared on those videos. 3 years of carefully maintained anonymity destroyed in seconds. But looking at Emma's concerned face, he realized he couldn't regret it. He'd saved a life last night. Whatever came next, that truth remained unchanged. "Let them dig," he said, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. "I'm tired of running from it." Emma set down her phone and really looked at him. "You mean that?" "I think I do. Your mother always said the truth had its own power, that lies and half-truths were what made things complicated. Maybe it's time I stopped letting other people's version of that night define me." Before Emma could respond, there was a knock at the door. They both froze. Nobody visited them, especially not at 7 in the morning. Marcus moved to the door with the caution of someone who'd learned that unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, wearing a black coat that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Behind her stood a younger man in a suit, clearly security, but trying not to look like it. Marcus recognized her from newspaper photos, though grief had aged her considerably. Senator Morrison's widow, Helen. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, opening the door but not stepping aside to invite her in. "How did you find me?" "The same way everyone else will, by noon," she replied, her voice carrying a slight tremor that could have been age or emotion. "May I come in? I promise this won't take long." Marcus glanced back at Emma, who was watching with wide eyes. His daughter nodded slightly, and he stepped aside. Helen Morrison entered their small apartment without any visible reaction to its modest circumstances. though Marcus noticed her security guard's eyes cataloging exits and potential threats. Professional habit just like his own. "You must be Emma," Helen said, offering a sad smile. "You look like your mother. I saw her picture in the news stories back when everything happened." "Would you like some coffee?" Emma asked, falling back on the manners Sarah had instilled in her. "That's kind, but no thank you." Helen turned to Marcus. "I know I should have called first, but I was afraid you'd refuse to see me. And after last night, after seeing you save that woman, I knew I couldn't wait any longer." "Mrs. Morrison, please let me speak." She pulled out a worn envelope from her coat pocket. "I've been carrying this for 2 years trying to find the courage to send it. It's from my son, written a week before he died. He was struggling with his assignment with being in Baghdad with the danger. He was scared, Mr. Riley, terrified, actually. In this letter, he told me he wanted to come home, that he wasn't cut out for this, that he'd only gone because his father expected it of him." Marcus felt his throat tighten. The senator's son, James Morrison Jr., had been attached to the diplomatic mission as a cultural liaison, a relatively safe position that had become deadly when insurgents had attacked their convoy. "He wrote about you," Helen continued. "Said you were the only one who treated him like a person instead of the senator's son. Said you'd been teaching him how to stay safe, how to read situations. He trusted you, Mr. Riley. He wrote that if anything happened, he knew you'd make the right decision." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He sank into their threadbare couch, his legs suddenly unable to support him. "The journalist, Maria Santos, she had 3 children," Helen said softly. "My husband knew that. He knew everything about that night within hours. The insurgents had them both guns to their heads. You had 2 seconds to act, could only reach 1. You chose her." "I'm sorry." Marcus whispered the words, inadequate, but all he had. "I know you are. I've been angry for 3 years, furious at you for not saving my son. But I've also been angry at my husband for sending Jimmy to Baghdad in the first place, for using his position to get him that assignment when Jimmy wanted to go to art school instead. I've been angry at the insurgents, at the military, at God himself." She sat down across from him, her composed facade cracking slightly. "But being angry doesn't bring him back, and destroying your life didn't bring him back either." Emma moved closer to her father, her hand finding his shoulder. "My husband was wrong to do what he did to you," Helen said firmly. "Using his influence to ensure you were dishonorably discharged, blackballing you from security work, turning you into a pariah. It was cruel and it was wrong. He was grieving, but that doesn't excuse it. He was a father who lost his son," Marcus said. "I understand his anger. Understanding it doesn't make it right." Helen stood smoothing her coat. "I've spoken to people who still have influence despite my husband's death. Your discharge is being reviewed. It will be changed to honorable with full benefits restored. Your pension, your daughter's education, benefits, everything. It won't undo the last 3 years, but it's a start." Marcus stood as well, unsteady. "Why are you doing this?" "Because my son would want me to. Because that journalist you saved has 3 children who still have their mother. Because last night you proved who you really are, someone who puts themselves between danger and the innocent regardless of the personal cost." She moved toward the door, then paused. "And because forgiveness is the only way any of us move forward." She left as suddenly as she'd arrived. Leaving Marcus and Emma standing in their small apartment, the world fundamentally shifted beneath their feet. "Dad?" Emma's voice was small. "Are you okay?" Marcus pulled his daughter into a hug, holding her tight. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I think maybe I will be." His phone rang. Victoria Chen's personal number appeared on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, he answered. "Mr. Riley, I apologize for calling so early, but I wanted to reach you before the media circus truly begins. I've had my security team reviewing footage from last night, and they've identified 3 other potential threats that were in the restaurant, people who reacted unusually to the attack, possibly accomplices, who chose not to act when the primary attacker failed." Marcus's mind immediately shifted into tactical mode. "Send me the footage. I'll review it." "Does this mean you're considering my offer?" "It means I'm not going to let you walk into another ambush if I can help it." "My driver is outside your building. I'd like to discuss this in person if you're willing. I can promise you'll be home before your daughter returns from school." Marcus looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "Go," she said. "I'll be fine. Mrs. Rodriguez is home if I need anything." 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the back of a Bentley that cost more than he'd made in his entire military career. Victoria sat across from him, looking perfectly composed despite having nearly died 12 hours earlier. She was studying him with the same intensity she probably brought to hostile takeover negotiations. "You've seen combat," she said. It wasn't a question. "Multiple tours, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. And you've done executive protection. Among other things. The other things being classified, I assume." She pulled out a tablet, swiping through files. "I've had my people working all night. The attack wasn't random. The man who tried to kill me. Thomas Brennan, his father, owned a small tech company that I acquired 2 years ago. The acquisition was completely legal, but apparently Brennan Sr. had hidden massive debts. When we took over and discovered them, we had to report them. He went to prison for fraud, killed himself 6 months ago. And the son blames you. The son, and possibly others. We found connections to at least 12 other individuals who lost money when Brennan's fraud was exposed. Any of them could be seeking revenge." She fixed him with those intense eyes. "I need someone who can see threats before they materialize. Someone who understands that danger doesn't always come from where you expect it. You have a security team?" "I have expensive bodyguards who look impressive and check the obvious boxes. What I need is someone who thinks like a predator, because that's the only way to stop one." She leaned forward. "I'm offering you a position as my head of security. The salary is $500,000 annually, plus benefits, plus a signing bonus that would ensure your daughter never has to worry about college tuition." The number was staggering. Marcus tried not to show his shock. "That's extremely generous." "It's practical. You saved my life, but more importantly, you saw the threat when my current team didn't. That failure could have cost me everything. I don't make the same mistake twice." "I haven't said yes." "But you haven't said no either." Victoria smiled slightly. "Look, I know you've been through hell. I know the last 3 years have been about survival, not living. I'm offering you a chance to do what you're clearly born to do, protect people, while also providing for your daughter. No hidden agenda, no tricks. Just a job that utilizes your skills and pays you what those skills are worth." The Bentley pulled up to a gleaming office tower in Midtown. Victoria's corporate headquarters, Marcus realized. "Come up, let me show you what you'd be protecting." The executive floor of Nexus Technologies was like something from a movie, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of Manhattan modern art that probably cost millions, and an army of assistants who moved with choreographed efficiency. But Marcus noticed other things too: security cameras with blind spots, windows that weren't bulletproof, too many access points without proper monitoring. "You're cataloging vulnerabilities," Victoria observed, watching him survey the space. "Your security is designed to look impressive, not be effective. Hence why I need you." She led him to a conference room where 3 men in expensive suits were waiting. "My board of directors wants to meet you. The attack last night has them spooked. Our stock dropped 12% in pre-market trading. Ms. Chen, with respect, I haven't agreed to anything yet." "I know, but humor me. Let them see the man who saved my life. Let them understand why I want to restructure our entire security protocol around your expertise." The meeting was surreal. 3 billionaires grilling him about his experience, his training, his thoughts on corporate security. Marcus answered honestly, perhaps too honestly, pointing out that their current security was theater designed to make you feel safe without actually making you safe. "And you could do better," one of them challenged. "I did do better, last night, with no preparation, no resources, and no backup." That shut them up. After the board members left, Victoria turned to him. "You don't pull punches. You're not paying me to, you wouldn't be paying me to tell you what you want to hear. So you're considering it." Marcus thought about Emma, about college, about the past 3 years of scraping by. "I need to think about it." "Of course. But while you're thinking, there's something else you should know. The FBI contacted me this morning. They believe the attack might be connected to something bigger, a coordinated effort against tech executives who've been involved in acquisitions that resulted in bankruptcy or fraud charges. I'm not the only target." She pulled up news feeds on her tablet. 3 other attacks in the past month, all targeting tech CEOs, all by people who'd lost everything in corporate acquisitions. They think there's someone coordinating these attacks, turning personal grievances into weapons. Victoria continued. The FBI wants to assign me protection, but I'd rather have someone I choose, someone I trust. You don't know me well enough to trust me. I know you threw yourself between me and a knife. I know you chose to save a mother of 3 over a senator's son, even knowing what it would cost you. I know you've been punishing yourself for 3 years for making the right choice in an impossible situation. She stood moving to the window that overlooked the city. I know that men like you don't stop being who they are just because the world tells them to. You're a protector, Mr. Riley. It's not what you do, it's who you are. Marcus joined her at the window, looking down at the city moving 40 floors below. If I say yes, I do things my way. Complete overhaul of your security protocols. No more pretty bodyguards who look good in suits but couldn't stop a determined teenager. Real security, which means inconvenience, which means changing your routines, which means accepting that your life is in danger and acting accordingly. Done. And my daughter remains off limits. No background checks on her, no surprise college admission letters, no gifts or interference in her life unless I specifically approve it. Agreed, though I should mention that MIT's summer program applications close next week. Marcus turned to look at her. You're not playing fair. I never do. It's how I built this empire. She extended her hand. 1-year contract renewable based on performance. If you hate it, you walk away with enough money to ensure Emma gets the education she deserves. If it works out, we continue. Simple. Marcus stared at her hand for a long moment, thinking about choices and consequences about the path that had led him from Baghdad to this moment. Then he shook it, feeling the weight of the past 3 years beginning to lift. I'll need to review all your current security personnel. Your procedures, your travel protocols, everything. My assistant will give you complete access. Victoria smiled, and for the first time since the attack, she looked genuinely relieved. Welcome to Nexus Technologies, Mr. Riley. The rest of the day passed in a blur of paperwork, security assessments, and meetings with Victoria's existing team, who regarded him with a mixture of resentment and curiosity. He identified 17 major vulnerabilities in the first hour, including the fact that Victoria's home address was essentially public knowledge, and her morning jogging route hadn't varied in 2 years. She's going to hate the changes you're proposing, warned Jackson, the current head of security, who was being politely transitioned to a different role. Ms. Chen values her independence. She'll hate being dead more, Marcus replied bluntly. By the time he made it home, Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table, calculus problems spread out before her. She looked up when he entered, reading his expression instantly. You took the job. How do you know? You're standing straighter. You look alive again. She set down her pencil. Is it dangerous? Marcus sat down across from her, deciding she deserved honesty. Probably. The woman I'm protecting has enemies, real ones who want her dead. But it's what I'm good at, Em. It's what I know how to do. And the money doesn't hurt, Emma added with a small smile. The money definitely doesn't hurt. Your MIT summer program is covered, and your college tuition and pretty much anything else you need educationally. Emma came around the table and hugged him tight. I'm proud of you, Dad. For last night, for today, for finally letting yourself be who you are again. That evening, as Marcus reviewed security footage from Victoria's office building, identifying patterns and vulnerabilities, he got a text from an unknown number. When he opened it, his blood chilled. You chose the wrong side, Riley. The journalist in Baghdad was just the beginning. You think you're protecting her, but you're just adding yourself to the target list. Some choices can't be undone. A friend. Marcus immediately forwarded the message to his new security team and the FBI contact Victoria had provided. Then he did what he'd always done when threatened. He planned, he prepared, and he refused to back down. The past had found him just as he'd always known it would. But this time he wasn't running. This time he had something worth fighting for, not just Emma's future, but his own redemption. Victoria Chen had offered him more than a job. She'd offered him a chance to stop hiding from who he was. The ghost was done haunting himself. It was time to become the guardian instead. That night, Marcus stood by his window looking out at Brooklyn, sleeping beneath a canopy of stars and streetlights. Somewhere out there, threats were gathering people who wanted Victoria Chen dead for reasons real or imagined. They thought she'd be easy prey, a corporate executive protected by expensive but ineffective security. They were about to learn otherwise. His phone buzzed with another message, this one from Victoria. Thank you for saying yes. I know it wasn't easy, but I meant what I said. You're not just who I need, you're who you are. See you tomorrow. V. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new choices to make. But for the first time in 3 years, he was ready for them. The soldier who'd been court-martialed for saving the wrong life was gone. In his place stood something more, a protector who'd learned that sometimes the wrong choice by everyone else's standards was the only right choice you could make. Emma appeared in the doorway of his room. Can't sleep. Just thinking. About Baghdad. About everything. About how one moment can change your entire life for better or worse. Like last night at the restaurant. Exactly like that. He turned to his daughter. I spent 3 years believing I'd made the wrong choice that night in Baghdad. But if I hadn't made that choice, if I hadn't become who that choice turned me into, I wouldn't have been at that restaurant last night. Victoria Chen would be dead. And we wouldn't have this chance at a better life. Emma moved to stand beside him at the window. Mom used to say that everything happens for a reason, even the bad stuff. That it's all leading somewhere, even when we can't see where. Your mother was smarter than both of us combined. She also said you were the strongest man she knew, not because you never fell down, but because you always got back up. Emma leaned against his shoulder. Looks like you're finally getting back up, Dad. As they stood there together, father and daughter looking out at the city that had become their refuge and was now becoming their opportunity. Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope. Not just for survival, but for an actual future. The attack at the restaurant had been meant to end a life. Instead, it had resurrected one. Tomorrow, he would begin the work of keeping Victoria Chen alive. But tonight, in this moment with his daughter beside him and the weight of the past finally beginning to lift, Marcus Riley was already succeeding at something far more important. He was learning to live again. The city hummed its eternal song outside their window, indifferent to individual struggles but somehow embracing them all. And Marcus, for the first time in years, felt like he was part of that song again. Not just listening to it from the shadows, but adding his own note to the endless symphony of choices and consequences, failures and redemptions, endings that became beginnings. Get some sleep, Em, he said softly. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. For both of us, she replied, kissing his cheek before heading to her room. Marcus remained at the window a while longer, planning tomorrow's security improvements, thinking about the threat in that text message, wondering who from his past had found him and what they wanted. But underneath all of that, running like a current through everything else, was a feeling he'd thought was lost forever. Purpose. He had a job to do, a daughter to provide, for a life to rebuild. The ghosts of Baghdad would always be with him, but they no longer defined him. He was more than his worst moment, more than his most controversial choice. He was Marcus Riley, protector, father, survivor. And tomorrow he would prove that some people, no matter how far they fall, always find a way to rise again. The next morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made New York look like a movie set, all sharp edges and gleaming surfaces. Marcus arrived at Nexus Technologies at 5 a.m., 3 hours before Victoria typically showed up, using the time to walk every inch of the building with fresh eyes. The overnight security guard, a retired cop named Martinez, was surprised to see someone actually checking the service entrances and emergency exits. In 3 years, you're the first security executive to actually look at these doors? Martinez said, opening another unmarked entrance that led directly to the executive elevator shaft. Previous guys were all about the main lobby, the visible stuff. The visible stuff doesn't kill you, Marcus replied, photographing the lock mechanism that hadn't been updated since the building was constructed in 1987. It's the door everyone forgets about that lets death walk right in. By the time Victoria arrived at 8, Marcus had compiled a 40-page report on immediate security failures that needed addressing. She found him in her office, having somehow bypassed her assistant and the keycard system that was supposed to be unbreachable. "How did you get in here?" she asked, more curious than alarmed. "Your assistant keeps a spare keycard taped under her desk drawer. Your office door lock can be bypassed with a credit card and 30 seconds of patience. And your private elevator has an override code that hasn't been changed since installation. It's still the manufacturer's default. He handed her the report. Page 1 is what will kill you this week. Page 40 is what might kill you next year. Victoria sat down, scanning the report with the speed-reading skill that had helped her conquer corporate America. Her expression grew increasingly serious as she absorbed the scope of vulnerabilities. This is going to cost a fortune to fix. Your life or your money? Choose one. She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw real fear in her eyes. It's really that bad. Worse. Whoever sent me that text last night knows I'm working for you now. They're accelerating their timeline. We need to move fast. What text? Marcus showed her the message. Victoria read it twice, her fingers tightening on her phone. A friend. Someone from your past. Someone who knows about Baghdad. The list of people with those details is very small. Marcus moved to the window, automatically checking sight lines from neighboring buildings. Most of them are dead. There were 5 of us in that convoy when the insurgents hit. Me, the journalist, Maria Santos, James Morrison Jr., our driver, a local who died in the initial explosion, and our interpreter, Khalid Nasir. Khalid disappeared that night. We assumed he was working with the insurgents, that he'd set us up. But you're not sure. I'm not sure of anything anymore. Marcus turned back to her. We need to change your patterns immediately. No more morning jogs along the same route. No more regular lunch spots. No more predictable anything. Victoria's phone buzzed. Her face paled as she read the message. There's been another attack. Jennifer Wu, CEO of Quantum Solutions. Someone tried to run her off the road this morning. She's in critical condition. Marcus was already moving, pulling Victoria away from the window. We're leaving. Now. I have meetings. Cancel them. We're going to a secure location until I can assess this new threat. For a moment, Victoria looked like she might argue. She was a woman used to giving orders, not taking them. Then she nodded, trusting his expertise the way he'd hoped she would. They took the service elevator Marcus had identified earlier, avoiding the main lobby. His rental car was parked in a loading dock, invisible to anyone watching the executive parking garage. As they drove through Manhattan's morning traffic, Victoria worked her phone-canceling appointments and managing the crisis of another tech CEO being targeted. Where are we going? She asked. Brooklyn. My apartment. No one would look for you there. Your daughter is at school. She won't be home until 4. Marcus checked the mirrors, constantly watching for surveillance. Your penthouse is compromised. Your Hamptons house is too isolated. Your office is a security nightmare. Until I can establish a proper safe house, my place is the best option. Victoria looked out at Brooklyn, approaching a world away from her usual Manhattan existence. You know, in all my strategic planning, all my risk assessments, I never imagined this. Being hunted like an animal because of business decisions. Every decision has consequences. Some just take longer to arrive. The apartment building looked even shabbier in the morning light, but Marcus didn't apologize for it. This was his world, his territory. He knew every resident, every routine, every anomaly that might signal danger. Mrs. Rodriguez was in the hallway when they arrived, her eyes widening at the sight of Victoria Chen in her designer suit. Marcus, you brought a friend. Business, Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Ms. Chen. The elderly woman's eyes lit up with recognition. From the news, you're the one Marcus saved. Ay Dios mío, what a hero we have living here. Yes, Victoria said simply. He is. Inside the apartment, Victoria moved through the small space with careful respect, taking in the photos of Sarah, the evidence of a life lived on a drastically reduced scale from what Marcus had probably once known. Your wife was beautiful, she said, stopping at a photo of Sarah and Emma at the beach, both laughing at something beyond the camera's view. She was everything, Marcus replied, checking the window locks, the sightlines already turning the apartment into a defensive position. Coffee, please. As he made coffee with the ancient machine Sarah had bought at a yard sale years ago, Marcus's phone rang. FBI Special Agent Diana Foster, his new liaison for the threat against Victoria. Riley, we need to talk. Can you come to Federal Plaza? Not leaving my principal. You can come to us. There was a pause. Where are you? Marcus gave her the address, ignoring Foster's surprise at the Brooklyn location. There's been a development, Foster said. We found Thomas Brennan's laptop. He wasn't working alone. There's an entire network, Riley. They call themselves The Reckoning. They're targeting tech executives who they blame for destroying lives through acquisitions and automation. How many? At least 30 members that we've identified. They've been planning this for 2 years. Your employer is number 3 on their list. Who's number 1? Michael Chen, no relation to your principal. He's already in protective custody after someone poisoned his dog as a warning. Marcus ended the call and turned to find Victoria had moved closer, having heard his side of the conversation. 30 people want me dead. 30 people we know about. Marcus handed her the coffee, noting how her hands trembled slightly. We need to be smarter than all of them. How do we do that? By not being where they expect you to be. By changing everything about how you operate. By accepting that your old life is over until we stop this threat. Victoria sank onto his worn couch, looking smaller somehow, without the armor of her office and authority. I built Nexus from nothing, 18-hour days, 7 days a week for 15 years, and now I have to hide because some people can't accept that business is brutal. You took their livelihoods. In their minds, you took their lives. Right or wrong, legal or illegal, that's how they see it. Do you think they're justified? She looked at him directly. Challenging. Marcus considered his answer carefully. I think pain makes people do terrible things. I think loss can transform grief into rage. I think everyone believes they're the hero of their own story, even when they're planning murder. That's not an answer. You want to know if I think you deserve this? Marcus sat across from her. No one deserves to be hunted. But actions have consequences, even legal ones, especially legal ones sometimes because there's no other recourse for the damaged. Victoria studied him. You're thinking about Baghdad again, about consequences. I'm always thinking about Baghdad. Every choice I make is filtered through that night. He stood moving to the window again, a habit he couldn't break. The journalist I saved, Maria Santos, she sends me a Christmas card every year. Pictures of her kids growing up. She thinks she's being kind, showing me that my choice mattered. But every photo is also a reminder of what James Morrison Jr. will never have. You can't live like that, measuring every life saved against the one lost. Can I? Isn't that exactly what I did that night? 3 kids versus 1. The math of survival. Before Victoria could respond, there was a knock at the door. Marcus was instantly alert, hand moving to the concealed carry weapon he'd started wearing again. It's Emma, a young voice called. Dad, I know you're in there. School let out early for teacher conferences. Marcus opened the door to find his daughter holding her backpack, looking curious rather than concerned. Her eyes immediately found Victoria. Ms. Chen, you look smaller in person. Emma, Marcus warned. It's all right, Victoria said, standing. I probably do. Television adds 10 pounds, and a boardroom adds another 10 in presence. Emma entered, setting down her backpack with the casual efficiency of a teenager used to adapting. Are we protecting her here? Because no offense, Dad, but our apartment isn't exactly a fortress. It's temporary, Marcus said. Cool. Should I do my homework in my room so you can talk about secret security stuff? That would be helpful. Em? But Emma paused, looking at Victoria with that direct gaze she'd inherited from Sarah. My dad's the best at what he does. If anyone can keep you safe, it's him. He just needs to remember that keeping people safe includes himself. After Emma disappeared into her room, Victoria turned to Marcus. She's remarkable. She's had to grow up too fast. Single parent, reduced circumstances, watching her father fall apart and slowly rebuild. She's watching her father be who he really is. Marcus's phone buzzed. Another unknown number, but this time he recognized the international prefix. He answered cautiously. Hello, old friend. The voice was heavily accented but familiar, and Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. Khalid. Victoria's eyes widened. She moved closer, able to hear the voice from the phone. I heard you found new work, protecting the rich woman from the news. Very noble, Marcus. Very you. We thought you were dead. Everyone thought many things that night. But I survived, just as you did. Just as the journalist did. Poor James, though. He was never meant for that world. You set us up. You were working with the insurgents. Khalid laughed a bitter sound. Is that what you told yourself, that I was the enemy? No, Marcus. I was trying to save you all. I knew the attack was coming, tried to warn you, but your protocols, your American procedures, they didn't allow for listening to the local help. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. You're lying. Emma, think back. Remember how I insisted on taking a different route that day? Remember how I kept checking my phone, trying to delay departure? I was waiting for confirmation that the threat had passed. But you and your schedule, your inflexible timeline. The memories flooded back details Marcus had suppressed or misremembered. Khalid had been agitated that day, insistent about delays, about route changes. They'd dismissed it as local paranoia. Even if that's true, why contact me now? Because you're about to make another choice, Marcus. Another impossible decision. The Reckoning, as they call themselves, they've hired professional help. Someone from our world, someone who knows how you think, how you operate. Who? Does it matter? There are so many of us now displaced soldiers from forgotten wars selling our skills to whoever pays. But I can tell you this, they know about Emma. They know about your patterns. They know about that coffee shop on 3rd Avenue where you stop every morning at exactly 6:15. Marcus felt his blood chill. He hadn't told anyone about the coffee shop, had only been there twice since starting the job. You're watching me. Everyone is watching everyone now, my friend. The question is whether you're watching the right people. Khalid paused. Check your email. I sent you something that might help. Consider it payment for an old debt. You saved Maria that night, but you also tried to save James. You made the choice you could live with. Not everyone would have chosen at all. The line went dead. Marcus immediately opened his email, finding a message from an encrypted address. Attached were surveillance photos, financial records, and a partial membership list of the Reckoning. One name stood out highlighted in yellow: David Chen, Michael Chen's brother, and Victoria's former business partner who she'd forced out 5 years ago. David's involved, Victoria gasped, reading over his shoulder. We built Nexus together. I bought him out for $50 million. $50 million wasn't enough. He wanted to stay and run the company into the ground with his vision of ethical technology. We had fundamental disagreements about growth versus values. She sank back onto the couch. He said, I'd regret choosing money over morality. I thought he was being dramatic. FBI agent Foster arrived 20 minutes later, accompanied by 2 other agents. She was younger than Marcus had expected, mid-30s, with the kind of alertness that came from years of watching for danger. Ms. Chen, we need to move you to protective custody immediately. No, Marcus said before Victoria could respond. Protective custody is predictable. Safe houses are on lists. We stay mobile. Mr. Riley, with respect, you're one man. The Reckoning has dozens of members, and now we know they've hired professional killers, which is why we don't do what they expect. Marcus showed her Khalid's intel. This came from a source in the field. David Chen is coordinating the attacks. He knows how Victoria thinks, knows her habits, her preferences. Protective custody plays right into his hands. Foster studied the documents. This source can we verify? No, but I trust it. You trust someone who might have been involved in Baghdad? Marcus felt Victoria's eyes on him. I trust that he has no reason to lie now. And this intelligence is actionable. David Chen owns a warehouse in Queens purchased through a shell company 6 months ago. That's your coordination center. Foster was already on her phone calling in resources. While she coordinated a potential raid, Marcus pulled Victoria aside. We need to disappear for a few days. Let the FBI flesh out the immediate threats while we establish new patterns, new protocols. Where would we go? I know a place. Upstate. A cabin that belonged to my unit. We used it for decompression after deployments. It's completely off the grid. What about Emma? She comes with us. I'm not leaving her here as potential leverage. Victoria nodded, then surprised him by taking his hand. Marcus, what Khalid said about that night. You know it wasn't your fault, right? You made the best decision you could with the information you had. Did I? Or did I just make the decision I could live with, like he said? Sometimes those are the same thing. Emma emerged from her room having clearly been listening. So we're going on the run, like in the movies. It's not a movie. This is serious. I know. She was already packing a bag with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to be ready for anything. Mom always kept go bags for us, remember? After you came back from your last deployment, she said we should always be ready to move fast if your past caught up. Marcus stared at his daughter. She said your job was to make enemies so other people could sleep safely, and that sometimes those enemies might come looking for payback. Emma zipped up her bag. She also said that if that ever happened, we should trust you completely because you'd know how to keep us safe. Sarah had understood him better than he'd ever realized, had prepared for contingencies he'd never wanted to consider. Even from beyond the grave, she was still taking care of them. They left Brooklyn as the sun began to set, taking Marcus's rental car with Victoria hidden in the back seat. Foster had agreed to the plan, reluctantly assigning 2 agents to follow at a distance. The cabin was 4 hours north, nestled in the Catskill Mountains, where cell service was spotty and strangers were noticed. Emma sat in the front seat playing Navigator with her phone while she still had signal. "So, Miss Chen, what's it like being a billionaire?" "Emma," Marcus warned. "It's fine," Victoria said from the back. "It's isolating, honestly. Everyone wants something from you. Every relationship becomes transactional. You never know if people like you or your bank account." "That's sad," Emma said simply. "Dad's the opposite. He pushes everyone away so they can't want anything from him." "I'm right here," Marcus reminded them. "We know," both women said simultaneously, then shared a smile. The drive took them through increasingly rural territory, the lights of civilization fading to scattered stars of isolated homes. Marcus took several deliberate detours, doubling back twice to ensure they weren't followed beyond the FBI tail. The cabin appeared suddenly in the headlights, a modest structure that looked exactly as it had 3 years ago. Marcus had been here last with his unit 2 weeks before the Baghdad mission, all of them decompressing from a particularly brutal operation in Mosul. "It's perfect," Victoria said, surprising him. "Completely unexpected. No one would look for me here." Inside the cabin was basic but functional. Military clean, Sarah would have called it. Everything in its place. Everything with a purpose. Marcus did a security sweep while Emma helped Victoria settle into the single guest room. "Your dad was different before, wasn't he?" Marcus heard Victoria ask Emma while he checked the perimeter. "He was lighter," Emma replied. "He laughed more. But he was also gone a lot, and when he was home, part of him was still over there. Mom used to say he carried the world's weight on his shoulders. After Baghdad, he just stopped pretending he didn't." Marcus stood in the doorway watching his daughter explain his life with the clarity of youth. "He's getting better, though," Emma continued. "Since the restaurant, since you. He's remembering who he is instead of just who he failed to be." That night, after Emma had gone to bed and Victoria was working on her laptop, using the cabin's surprisingly robust satellite internet, Marcus stood on the porch watching the darkness. His phone had no signal, but the satellite phone he'd retrieved from the cabin's emergency kit worked fine. It rang once. "Khalid. You made it to the cabin. Good. Your FBI friends are about to raid David Chen's warehouse. They'll find weapons and plans, but not David. He's smarter than that." "Where is he?" "Moving. Always moving. Like you now." Khalid paused. "There's something else you should know. The professional they hired, it's someone we both know. Someone from Mosul." Marcus's blood chilled. "Who?" "Dmitry Volkov, the Russian mercenary who was running security for the insurgents. The one who got away that night." Dmitry Volkov. Marcus remembered him, former Spetsnaz turned mercenary, utterly ruthless. They'd exchanged fire in 3 different operations, each walking away wounded but alive. A professional who took pride in his work and held grudges forever. "He blames you for Mosul," Khalid continued. "His brother died in the strike you called in. Now he gets paid to settle the score." "How do you know all this, "Because I've been tracking the reckoning for 6 months. They tried to recruit me, thought a former interpreter who'd been betrayed by Americans would be sympathetic. I've been feeding them false information while gathering real intelligence." "Why help me?" "Because despite what happened that night, despite the choices made and lives lost, you tried to do right. That matters, Marcus. In our world of gray moralities and impossible choices, intention matters." After the call ended, Marcus found Victoria standing behind him, having heard everything. "A Russian mercenary. That sounds bad." "It is bad. Dmitry is one of the best. Patient, methodical, ruthless. Better than you." Marcus considered lying, offering comfort. But she deserved truth. Different than me. I protect. He hunts. Sometimes the hunter wins, sometimes the protector does. It depends on who makes the first mistake. And you don't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The trick is making smaller ones than your opponent. Victoria moved closer, pulling a blanket around her shoulders against the mountain cold. I'm scared, Marcus. For the first time in my adult life, I'm genuinely terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Fear makes you careful. Is that what you felt in Baghdad? Fear, sir. Terror, Marcus admitted. Pure, paralyzing terror. But also clarity. In those 2 seconds when I had to choose, everything became simple. Save who you can, live with the consequences, move forward or die standing still. And now I have the luxury of time to plan to prepare. Dmitri will come, but he'll want it to be perfect. He's an artist in his own twisted way. That gives us time to be ready. Victoria surprised him by leaning against his shoulder, seeking comfort in proximity. I hired you to protect me, but I think maybe we're protecting each other. Before Marcus could respond, his satellite phone rang again. FBI agent Foster. Riley, we hit the warehouse, found enough evidence to arrest 15 members of the Reckoning. But David Chen wasn't there, and we have a bigger problem. What kind of problem? Someone leaked your location. We intercepted chatter they know about the cabin. You need to move, now. Marcus was already in motion, rushing inside to wake Emma. Victoria followed her, fear replaced by urgent efficiency. Em, we're leaving. Grab your bag. His daughter was instantly alert, another skill learned from years of military family life. Bad guys? Maybe. We're not staying to find out. They were in the car within 3 minutes, Marcus pulling away without headlights, using memory and moonlight to navigate the dirt road. Behind them, the cabin sat empty, a trap that would catch nothing but shadows. Where are we going? Victoria asked. Vermont. I have a friend there, someone from my unit who runs a security training facility. It's built like a fortress. Can we trust him? Jake Morrison saved my life 6 times. I saved his 7. Yeah, we can trust him. Emma pulled out her phone now, showing signal as they reached the main road. Dad, there's something trending on Twitter about you. She showed him the screen at a red light. Someone had posted his military records, his full history, including classified details about Baghdad that should never have been public. The hashtag #GhostGuardian was trending with thousands debating whether he was a hero or a villain. Dimitri's work, Marcus said grimly. He's destroying my reputation before he destroys me physically. Classic psychological warfare. But people are defending you. Emma pointed out, scrolling through responses. Look, Maria Santos posted. She's telling the real story of that night. Marcus couldn't see the journalist's defense of his impossible choice, but Victoria read it aloud. Marcus Riley saved my life and the lives of my 3 children. He made a choice no human should have to make, and he's lived with the consequences every day since. He's not a ghost or a guardian. He's a man who stands between danger and the innocent, regardless of the personal cost. I owe him everything. The words hung in the car, heavy with meaning and memory. She's right, Victoria said quietly. You stand between danger and the innocent. That's who you are. Right now, I'm just trying to keep us alive, Marcus replied, pushing the accelerator harder as they entered the highway. In the rearview mirror, he caught a glimpse of headlights, too steady, too consistent. They were being followed, and not by FBI. Emma, get down, he said calmly. Victoria's seatbelt tight brace for maneuvers. Dad, it's okay, Em, just like the defensive driving course I taught you. Remember? Sometimes you have to move fast to stay safe. He waited until they reached a section of highway with multiple exits, then suddenly cut across 3 lanes, taking an exit at the last possible second. The following car tried to match the maneuver, but clipped a barrier, spinning out in a shower of sparks. Was that Dmitri? Victoria asked, voice tight. No, Dmitri would never be that obvious. That was the Reckoning amateurs trying to play professional games. Marcus took another sudden turn, then another, creating a maze of their path. Dmitri is somewhere else setting up the real trap. They drove through the night, Emma eventually falling asleep despite the tension her head against the window. Victoria stayed awake working on her phone, transferring money, delegating corporate responsibilities, preparing for an extended absence. I'm shutting down $1 billion company because some people can't accept that business is brutal, she said at one point. You're staying alive, Marcus corrected. The company will survive. You might not if you don't take this seriously. Oh, I'm taking it seriously. I've just transferred $10 million to an untraceable account. If something happens to me, it goes to Emma's education fund. Marcus looked at her sharply. I told you no interference in her life. It's not interference, it's insurance. If Dimitri succeeds, if the reckoning wins, Emma deserves a future that isn't destroyed by your association with me. Before Marcus could argue, his satellite phone rang. Jake Morrison, his old unit mate. Brother, I heard you were coming my way with trouble on your 6. How did you... Khalid called me. Yeah, that Khalid. Apparently he's been playing guardian angel. My facility is ready for you. Full defensive position, surveillance grid, the works. How far out are you? 2 hours. I'll have coffee waiting. And Marcus, it's good to hear you're back in the game. You weren't meant for shadows. The last 2 hours of the drive were the longest. Every set of headlights, a potential threat, every dark stretch of road, a possible ambush site. But they made it pulling through the gates of Morrison Security Solutions just as dawn painted the Vermont mountains gold. Jake stood waiting, looking exactly as he had 3 years ago, built like a linebacker, head shaved smile wide despite the circumstances. Marcus fucking Riley, he said, pulling Marcus into a bear hug. Welcome back to the land of the living. Jake, this is Victoria Chen and my daughter Emma. Ma'am, miss, welcome to my fortress. Nothing gets in here without my permission, and I'm very particular about my guest list. The facility was impressive, a converted farm that had been transformed into a training center for corporate security teams. High fences, cameras everywhere, defensive positions that looked decorative but weren't. Dmitry Volkov, Jake said once they were inside. Haven't heard that name in a while. Last I knew he was working for the Saudis. Now he's working for the Reckoning, Marcus explained. And he's coming for Victoria. For you, Jake corrected. Victoria is just the job. You're the one he wants to hurt. They spent the day establishing security protocols, setting up defensive positions, preparing for a siege that might or might not come. Emma helped with the surveillance systems, her computer skills surprising Jake. She's got your tactical mind and her mother's technical genius, Jake observed. That evening, as they ate dinner in Jake's military-style mess hall, the proximity alarms triggered. Someone was approaching the main gate. On the monitors, a single figure stood in the gathering darkness. Male, tall, patient. Marcus recognized the stance before the cameras could focus on the face. Dmitry Volkov had found them. But he wasn't attacking. He was standing at the gate, hands visible, clearly unarmed. In one hand, he held a white envelope. It's a trap, Jake said immediately. Of course it is, Marcus replied, already moving toward the door. But it's also a message. Dmitry doesn't do anything without meaning. You're not going out there, Victoria said, grabbing his arm. I have to. This is how our world works. Professional courtesy even between enemies. Especially between enemies, Jake added grimly. Marcus walked to the gate alone, every step measured, every sense alert. Dmitry stood perfectly still, a statue carved from dangerous intent. Marcus, Dmitry said in accented English. You look older. You look the same. Death apparently agrees with you. It pays well. Dmitry held out the envelope. The Reckoning wanted me to kill the woman immediately. I convinced them that destroying you first would be more satisfying. Marcus took the envelope, finding a single photograph inside. His old unit taken days before Baghdad. All of them smiling, unaware of what was coming. You were good soldiers, Dmitry said. Warriors. Now you're a bodyguard for a woman who destroys lives with spreadsheets. I protect innocent people from those who would harm them. Innocent. Your Victoria Chen has destroyed more lives than I ever have. At least I use bullets. She uses buyouts and bankruptcies. And that justifies murder. Dmitry smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. Everything justifies something to someone. You justified choosing the journalist over the senator's son. I justified taking money to kill you. The Reckoning justifies revenge as justice. Why warn me? Because you deserve a warrior's death, not an assassin's bullet. 3 days, Marcus. Secure your principal, prepare your defenses. In 3 days, I come for you both. If you survive, the reckoning will consider the debt paid. If you don't, he shrugged eloquently. And if we run, then I hunt you without courtesy, without warning. Your daughter becomes leverage. Your friend Jake becomes collateral damage. Everyone you care about becomes a target. Dmitri turned to leave, then paused. Mosul was business, Marcus. My brother chose his side, died for it. But this is personal now. You've become something less than you were, and that offends me. I've become a father, a protector. You've become a shadow. 3 days. Become the warrior again, or die as the ghost you've been pretending to be. Dmitri walked away into the darkness, leaving Marcus standing at the gate with the photograph of better days when the choices were clear and the consequences still distant. 3 days to prepare for a confrontation with one of the deadliest men alive. 3 days to become himself again. 3 days to save not just Victoria's life, but his own soul. Marcus stood at the gate long after Dmitri had vanished into the darkness, the photograph trembling slightly in his hand. The faces of his old unit stared back at him. Thompson with his crooked grin, Williams always trying to look serious, Rodriguez making bunny ears behind Jake's head. All gone now except for Jake scattered by death or discharged by choices made and unmade. 3 days to it, he said when he returned to the mess hall where the others waited. He's giving us 3 days to prepare. That's insane, Victoria said. Why would he warn us? Such professional courtesy. Jake explained, already moving to a wall-mounted whiteboard beginning to sketch defensive positions. Dmitri's old school. He believes in honor among killers, even when the killing is personal. Honor. Victoria's voice rose with disbelief. He's planning to murder us, and you're talking about honor. In our world, honor is sometimes all that separates us from monsters, Marcus said quietly. Dmitri could have put a bullet through my head from 1,000 yards while I stood at that gate. Instead, he's giving us a chance to prepare to fight back. It's more courtesy than most get. Emma had been silent, processing everything with that quick intelligence she'd inherited from Sarah. So we have 3 days to turn this place into a fortress that can stop one of the world's best killers. Not stop, Marcus corrected. Survive, there's a difference. Jake pulled out architectural plans of his facility, spreading them across the table. The good news is this place was designed with defense in mind. Multiple fallback positions overlapping fields of fire, reinforced walls. The bad news is Dmitri knows how we think. He's studied our tactics, our training. Then we don't use our tactics, Marcus said, something crystallizing in his mind. We use his. What do you mean? Victoria asked. Dmitri expects me to defend, to protect, to shield. It's what I do, who I am. But what if we flip the script? What if instead of waiting for him to come to us, we make him defend against us? Jake's eyes lit up with understanding. Offense is defense. Fucking brilliant. Language, Marcus said, automatically glancing at Emma. Dad, I'm 15, not 5, and we're planning for a death match with a Russian assassin. I think the F word is appropriate. Despite everything, Marcus felt his mouth twitch toward a smile. His daughter's resilience continued to amaze him. They worked through the night planning and preparing. Jake's facility had an impressive armory, and Marcus found himself holding weapons he hadn't touched in 3 years. The weight felt right in his hands, familiar yet foreign, like meeting an old friend who'd become a stranger. You're rusty, Jake observed, watching Marcus run through basic drills. 3 years of pretending to be nobody takes a toll. Sarah wouldn't want you to pretend, Jake said quietly. She knew who you were when she married you, loved you not despite it but because of it. Sarah never saw me fail, never saw me choose wrong. Bullshit. Sarah saw you come home from a dozen operations where the choices were all bad and the outcomes worse. She saw you carry those weights, and she loved you anyway. Jake handed him a tactical vest, military grade, nothing like the corporate security gear. Besides, you didn't choose wrong in Baghdad. You chose the only option that made sense. Tell that to James Morrison, Jr. I would, but he's dead. And that's not on you. That's on the insurgents who took them hostage. You didn't kill him, Marcus. You just couldn't save everyone. Victoria appeared in the doorway of the armory, looking out of place among the weapons in her designer clothes that were now wrinkled from 2 days of running. The FBI called. They've arrested David Chen. He was trying to flee to Switzerland. That's good news, Emma said from behind her, having appointed herself as Victoria's shadow and unofficial assistant. Is it? Victoria looked exhausted. My former partner, someone I trusted with everything, wanted me dead because I was better at business than he was. How is that good news? Because with David in custody, the reckoning loses its coordination, Marcus explained. They're just angry individuals now, not an organized threat. Except for Dmitri. Except for Dmitri, Marcus agreed. But he's not motivated by the reckoning's cause. This is personal for him. The second day brought rain heavy and constant, turning Jake's fields into mud. Marcus used it to their advantage, setting up false positions that would be obvious in the mud-creating tracks that led nowhere, laying traps that looked like defensive positions but were actually kill zones. You're thinking like him now, Jake observed, watching Marcus work. Like a hunter, not a protector. I need to be both. Sarah once told me that the best defense was making your enemy afraid to attack. Dmitri doesn't fear me as a protector, but as a hunter, maybe. Victoria worked with Emma on the surveillance systems, the two of them developing an unlikely rapport. Marcus caught them laughing at something on Emma's phone, a moment of normalcy in the surreal situation. Your daughter is brilliant, Victoria told him during a break. She's already improved our camera coverage and set up an algorithm to detect anomalies in movement patterns. She gets that from her mother. The protective instinct, the tactical thinking, that's all you, though. Marcus watched Emma explaining something technical to Jake, her hands moving animatedly. I tried to shield her from this world. Sarah and I agreed she'd have a normal life away from violence and impossible choices. Life had other plans. Life always does. Marcus checked his watch. 36 hours until Dimitri's deadline. I need you to understand something, Victoria. If this goes bad, if Dmitri gets past me, Jake will get you and Emma out. There's an extraction protocol. Stop. Victoria's voice was firm. You're not dying for me, Marcus. That's not how this ends. That's exactly what you're paying me for, to stand between you and danger. I'm paying you to keep me alive, not to sacrifice yourself. There's a difference. She moved closer, her hand touching his arm. Besides, Emma needs her father. She's already lost her mother. Don't you dare make her an orphan. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus found himself on the roof of Jake's main building, watching the darkness through night vision goggles. The rain had stopped, leaving everything crisp and clear. Perfect conditions for a sniper. You're thinking too hard. Khalid's voice came through the satellite phone Marcus hadn't realized he'd answered. How do you know what I'm thinking? Because I know you, Marcus. You're up there calculating angles, planning sacrifices, preparing to die. It's what you do, carry the weight, so others don't have to. It's my job. Your job is to win, to survive, to show Dmitri that the ghost he thinks you've become is actually something more dangerous, a man with something to live for. Dmitri's never lost a contracted kill. There's always a first time. Besides, he's never faced someone protecting their daughter before. That changes the mathematics. After the call, Marcus climbed down to find Emma waiting for him in the kitchen, hot chocolate in hand despite the late hour. Can't sleep either, she asked. Too much to think about. Mom used to say that when you couldn't sleep before missions. She'd make you tea and tell you stories about normal things, grocery shopping, PTA meetings, anything to remind you there was a world beyond the fight. Marcus sat beside his daughter, accepting the offered hot chocolate. I miss her every day. Me too. But Dad, she wouldn't want you feeling guilty about any of this. Not Baghdad, not now. She'd want you to fight smart, win, and come home. When did you become so wise? When my dad was too busy punishing himself to notice I was growing up, Emma said, gently echoing her words from days ago. You're not alone in this, Dad. You have Jake. You have the FBI backup that's pretending to be invisible 3 miles away, and you have Victoria and me. You and Victoria aren't fighters. No, but we're worth fighting for, aren't we? Marcus pulled his daughter close. More than you know. The morning of the third day dawned clear and cold. Marcus was up before sunrise, running through final preparations. Jake had called in 2 more operators, old unit members who happened to be in the area. Thompson and Williams, impossibly alive despite the photograph's suggestion, otherwise arrived with grim faces and loaded weapons. "Heard you needed backup against Dmitry fucking Volkov," Thompson said, his crooked grin unchanged by the years. "Thought you were dead," Marcus said, gripping his friend's hand. "Disappointed. Relieved. How many of us can Dmitry take on?" "All of us," Williams said seriously. "But we'll make him work for it." Victoria found Marcus in the armory, now wearing tactical gear Jake had found for her. "I'm not hiding in a bunker while you all fight." "Yes, you are. That's exactly what you're doing. I spent 15 years building my company by refusing to do what men told me was appropriate. I'm not starting now." She checked the pistol Jake had given her with surprising competence. "I know how to shoot. My father insisted after I started getting death threats 5 years ago. Knowing how to shoot and killing someone are different things. I'll learn the difference if I have to." The first sign of Dmitry's approach came at noon, a drone high-altitude military grade circling Jake's facility like a mechanical vulture. "He's mapping our positions," Jake said, tracking it through his scope. "Want me to take it down?" "No, let him look. He'll see what we want him to see." The drone circled for an hour, then disappeared. The afternoon stretched taut with tension. Everyone at their positions waiting. Emma and Victoria were in the reinforced bunker Jake had built beneath his main building despite Victoria's protests. Marcus had simply looked at his daughter and said, "Keep her safe," knowing Emma would understand the real message, keep each other safe. At exactly 3 p.m., 72 hours after Dmitry's warning, the power went out. "EMP," Thompson asked. "Local junction box," Jake reported, checking his tablet running on shielded batteries. "He's cut the main lines, but not the backup generators. Those kicked in 30 seconds later, bathing everything in emergency lighting that threw strange shadows. Psychological warfare," Marcus said. "He wants us nervous jumping at shadows." The first real attack came from an unexpected direction through the old sewer system that ran beneath the property, a detail not on any public plans but somehow known to Dmitry. Gas canisters rolled out of drainage grates, filling the air with thick smoke. "Masks!" Jake shouted, and everyone pulled on the respirators they'd prepared. Through the smoke came shapes, not Dmitry, but hired help local mercenaries he'd recruited as cannon fodder. Marcus dropped 2 with controlled bursts, his muscle memory perfect, despite the 3-year gap. Thompson and Williams handled others, their movements coordinated from years of working together. "This isn't Dmitry's style," Marcus said into his radio. "He doesn't use amateurs for—" The shot came from the tree line. Impossible range threading between buildings to catch Williams in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. "Sniper everyone down." Another shot, this one catching Thompson's rifle, destroying it, but miraculously missing flesh. "He's hurting us," Jake realized, pushing us toward— The explosion cut him off. Not where they were, but at the bunker entrance. Dmitry had used the mercenary attack as a distraction while he placed charges at the very place they thought was safest. Marcus was running before the debris settled, his worst fears realized. The bunker entrance was collapsed, tons of concrete and earth blocking access. But the ventilation shaft, Sarah had always said, redundancy saved lives, was intact. "Emma, Victoria," he shouted down the shaft. "We're okay." Emma's voice came back scared but steady. "But we're trapped. The emergency exit is blocked too." Dmitry emerged from the smoke like a ghost, becoming solid, standing 50 yards away with a rifle that could punch through armor at twice that distance. Predictable Marcus, you always protect the vulnerable first. Now they're buried alive, and you have to choose fight me or dig them out. How long do you think the air will last in that bunker? Marcus felt the weight of another impossible choice descending. But this time something was different. This time he wasn't alone. Jake Thompson, despite his destroyed weapon, and even Williams, bleeding but mobile, formed up around him. His unit, or what was left of it, standing together. "Go," Jake said quietly. "Get them out. We'll handle Dmitry. He'll kill you." "Maybe, but that bunker has maybe 30 minutes of air with the ventilation partially blocked. You can dig them out or fight Dmitry, not both." It was Baghdad all over again, save who you can accept the losses, live with the consequences. But Marcus had learned something in 3 years of carrying guilt. Sometimes the impossible choice wasn't about choosing who lives and who dies. Sometimes it was about trusting others to make their own choices. Thompson suppressing fire. Williams get to medical, then provide overwatch. Jake with me. Marcus pulled out the charges he'd prepared, the ones he'd told no one about. We're not choosing. We're changing the game. He sprinted toward the bunker, but not directly. Instead, he headed for the equipment shed where Jake kept his excavator. Dimitri's shots followed him precise, but rushed as Thompson's covering fire forced him to move. The excavator roared to life just as Dimitri realized what was happening. Marcus had spent yesterday's rain delay learning to operate it, knowing that in a siege, mobility and heavy equipment could change everything. You think construction equipment will save them? Dimitri's voice carried across the compound. Marcus answered by driving the excavator straight at Dimitri's position, the reinforced cab deflecting rifle rounds. Dimitri had to move, and when he did, Jake was ready, forcing him further back with controlled bursts. The dance continued, Marcus using the excavator to clear debris, while Jake kept Dimitri busy, Thompson and Williams providing supporting fire despite their injuries. It was chaotic. Desperate, nothing like the clean, tactical operation they'd planned. 20 minutes. The bunker entrance was half clear. Marcus could hear Emma and Victoria working from inside, trying to shift debris. That's when Dimitri changed tactics. Instead of trying to shoot Marcus, he targeted the excavator's hydraulic lines. The machine died with a mechanical scream, useless. Time's running out, Marcus. 10 minutes, maybe less. You can't move those tons of concrete by hand. But Marcus was already moving not to the bunker, but to the armory, where the real surprise waited: thermite charges, military grade, the kind used to breach reinforced positions. Everyone back, he shouted, placing the charges not at the bunker entrance, but at a calculated point where the explosion would shift the debris pile rather than add to it. The thermite burned at 2,500 degrees Celsius, melting through concrete and steel like butter. The debris pile shifted, collapsed differently, creating a gap barely large enough for a person. Emma emerged first, gasping but moving, pulling Victoria behind her. Both were covered in concrete dust, but alive. Jake, extraction now, Marcus called. But Jake was already moving with the vehicle they'd prepared. That's when Dimitri made his mistake. Seeing his targets escaping, he broke cover for a clear shot. It was exactly what Marcus had been waiting for. The shot was impossible, 300 yards, moving target through smoke and fire. The kind of shot Marcus had made dozens of times in training, but never under these conditions. Time slowed. Sarah's voice whispered in his memory, "You never miss when it matters most." The rifle kicked against his shoulder. Dimitri spun his shot going wide and disappeared into the tree line. Marcus didn't pursue. He'd winged Dimitri, maybe seriously, maybe not. But it didn't matter. The message was sent, the ghost was gone. The warrior was back. They evacuated fast, knowing Dimitri might return. FBI agents swarmed the facility within minutes, having monitored everything. Special Agent Foster looked at the devastation with disbelief. "You fought off Dmitry Volkov with 5 people." "We survived Dmitry Volkov," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference." "Is he dead?" "Wounded. He'll disappear, regroup, but he won't come after Victoria again. The contract is blown, his reputation damaged. In his world, that's worse than death." The safe house Foster took them to was sterile, government issue, nothing like Jake's facility. Marcus sat with Emma while medics checked her for injuries, Victoria nearby giving her statement to federal agents. "You okay, Em?" "That was terrifying," she admitted. "But also, I get it now. Why you do this. Why Mom loved you for it. You don't just protect people, Dad. You make impossible things possible." Jake appeared, Williams and Thompson behind him, all bandaged but mobile. "Hell of a thing, Marcus. Haven't felt that alive in years." "I'm sorry I dragged you all into this." "You didn't drag us anywhere," Thompson said. "We came because that's what brothers do." Victoria finished with the FBI and approached the group. Despite everything she'd been through, she maintained that CEO composure, though Marcus could see the cracks underneath. "Gentlemen, I owe you more than money can repay, but I'm going to try anyway." She pulled out her phone, already calculating bonuses that would make these retired soldiers financially secure for life. "Not necessary, ma'am," Williams said. "We didn't do it for money. I know. That's why you deserve it." Later, after the others had gone to get medical attention or rest, Marcus found himself alone with Victoria on the safe house's balcony, looking out at a city that had no idea how close it had come to losing one of its most powerful citizens. The FBI says with David Chen in custody and most of the reckoning arrested, the immediate threat is over, Victoria said. Immediate threat. There's always another one coming. Is that why you do this? Because there's always another threat. Marcus considered the question. I do it because I can. Because when I don't, people die. Baghdad taught me that choosing wrong is better than not choosing at all. And what choice are you making now? The same one I made at that restaurant. To stand between danger and the innocent. To be who I am, not who my failures tried to make me. Victoria moved closer, her hand finding his. I need to tell you something. When we were trapped in that bunker when we thought we might die, Emma told me about her mother, about how Sarah saw you. She said Sarah once told her that heroes aren't people who never fall, they're people who get back up when falling would be easier. Sarah always saw the best in people. She saw the truth in people. There's a difference. Victoria squeezed his hand. The contract stands, Marcus. I want you as my head of security, but more than that, I want you to stop punishing yourself for Baghdad. You've carried that weight long enough. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from an international number he recognized. Well-fought warrior. The contract is void. Perhaps we meet again under different circumstances. Your daughter is safe, this I promise. No one touches her while I breathe. Professional courtesy. DV. Marcus showed it to Victoria, who shuddered. He's guaranteeing Emma's safety. It's his way of acknowledging respect. In our world, that's everything. Your world is insane. Yes, Marcus agreed. But it's the one we live in. Emma appeared in the doorway, having showered and changed into clean clothes the FBI had provided. So are we going home? Which home? Marcus asked. Brooklyn. Wherever you are is home, Dad. But maybe somewhere with better security systems. I have some ideas about improvements, and Miss Chen said she'd fund whatever we need. Victoria smiled. Your daughter is already redesigning my entire security infrastructure. She's got her father's tactical mind and her mother's innovation. God help us all, Marcus muttered, but he was smiling too. The next morning brought lawyers and paperwork, insurance claims, and police reports. The real world reasserting itself after days of deadly fantasy. But something fundamental had changed. Marcus walked differently, stood differently, existed differently. The ghost was gone. The warrior integrated with the father and protector he'd become. Jake called from his damaged facility. Insurance is being difficult about the battle damage. Something about acts of terrorism not being covered. Send me the bills, Victoria said, immediately taking the phone from Marcus. Your facility saved my life. I'll rebuild it better than before. While Victoria handled the business aspects, Marcus sat with Emma in the safe house's kitchen, sharing a normal breakfast for the first time in days. I'm proud of you, Em. You kept your head, helped Victoria stay calm, even figured out how to work the ventilation system to give us more time. I learned from the best, Emma said. Both you and Mom. She always said bravery wasn't about not being scared. It was about doing what needed to be done despite the fear. Your mother was the bravest person I knew. Was Dad, Mom's courage lives in us. In the choices we make, the people we protect, the way we get back up when life knocks us down. Emma looked at him with those wise eyes that saw too much. She'd be proud of who you're becoming. Not going back to who you were, but becoming something new. Agent Foster arrived with final paperwork and surprising news. Dmitry Volkov was spotted boarding a plane to Moscow. He's officially out of the country and Russia won't extradite. You're safe from him. We were never safe from him, Marcus corrected. We just became too expensive to kill. There's a difference. Also, there's this. Foster handed him an official document. Your discharge has been upgraded to honorable with full benefits retroactive to your separation date. There's 3 years of back pay plus your pension plus Emma's education benefits. Marcus stared at the paper, the weight of 3 years suddenly lifting. Helen Morrison did this. She started it. Maria Santos finished it. She's got more influence than you might think. Her investigative work has earned her powerful friends. She made calls, pushed buttons, said it was the least she could do for the man who gave her children their mother back. That afternoon, they returned to Brooklyn to pack their belongings. The apartment looked smaller somehow, shabbier, like something from another life. Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting with fresh cookies and tears. "You're leaving." "My job requires me to relocate," Marcus explained. "But we'll visit." "You saved that rich lady. You're a hero, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you different." As they packed, Emma found a box of Sarah's things Marcus hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside were letters, photographs, and a video camera with one final recording. Sarah's face filled the small screen, thin from the cancer, but still beautiful, still bright. "If you're watching this, Marcus, it means I'm gone, and you're finally going through my things. Knowing you, it's taken years and probably some catastrophic event to make you open this box." Emma curled against Marcus's side as they watched together. "I need you to know something," Sarah continued on the recording. "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of you dying with me, not physically, but spiritually. I know you, my love. I know you'll blame yourself for not saving me the way you blame yourself for every life you couldn't save, but that's not your burden to carry." She paused, seeming to look directly at them through time and death. "You are a warrior, Marcus Riley. It's not what you do, it's who you are. And warriors sometimes lose battles. But the war for good, for protecting the innocent, for standing between darkness and light, that war continues. Don't you dare stop fighting it because you're afraid of losing again." The recording shifted, showing Sarah in their old house, the nice one in Virginia, before everything fell apart. "Emma, my brilliant girl, you're probably watching this with your father. Take care of him, but don't let him smother you with protection. You're stronger than he knows, braver than you believe. You have my mind and his heart, and that combination will change the world." Sarah looked tired in the recording, but her smile remained. "I don't know what crisis brought you to this video, but I know you both survived it. You're survivors, fighters, protectors. It's in your DNA. Marcus, stop carrying Baghdad like a cross. You made the only choice you could. I would have made the same one. And Emma, don't let your father's guilt shape your future. You're allowed to be happy, to take risks, to live fully." She leaned closer to the camera. "I love you both more than words can say. Now stop crying, finish packing, and go live the lives you deserve. Make choices, make mistakes, make amends. But most of all, make me proud. Though honestly, you already have." The recording ended. Marcus and Emma sat in silence, tears streaming down both their faces. "She knew," Emma whispered. "Somehow she knew this would happen. Your mother always knew me better than I knew myself." They finished packing in contemplative silence, Sarah's presence filling the apartment one last time. As they loaded the last box into the car, Victoria had sent Marcus looked back at the building that had been their refuge for 3 years. "No regrets?" Emma asked. "No regrets. Only forward." "Where are we going forward to, Victoria's offered us the guest house on her estate while we look for something permanent. It's secure, has good schools nearby, and enough room for you to have a proper lab for your computer projects. And you'll keep protecting her." "It's what I do, Em. It's who I am." "Good," Emma said firmly, "because the Marcus Riley who hid in that apartment for 3 years wasn't my father. This man, the one who saved Victoria, who fought Dimitri, who chose to live again. This is my dad." As they drove away from Brooklyn toward their new life, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Khalid. "The warrior returns. The ghost is laid to rest. Your path ahead is clear, old friend. Walk it with pride. Some battles we lose, some we win, but the war for good continues. Your wife was right. You already make her proud." K. Marcus deleted the message but kept the sentiment. Through the rearview mirror, he caught sight of Victoria's security detail following at a discreet distance his team, now his responsibility. In the passenger seat, Emma was already on her laptop designing security improvements for their new home. The road stretched ahead full of unknown threats and unseen possibilities, but Marcus was ready for them now. The ghost of Baghdad would always be with him, but it no longer defined him. He was Marcus Riley, father, protector, warrior. He had fallen as far as a man could fall and had chosen to rise again. The guest house on Victoria's estate was larger than any home Marcus had ever owned, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens that seemed to stretch forever. Emma stood in the doorway of what would be her room, eyes wide at the built-in bookshelves and the desk that was perfect for her computer setup. This is too much, Marcus said to Victoria, who had personally come to help them settle in. This is practical, she countered. I need my head of security close, and Emma needs stability after everything she's been through. Besides, the main house is a quarter-mile away. You'll have privacy. And you'll have protection. That too. Victoria watched Emma exploring the house with barely contained excitement. She's already got 3 MIT professors interested in her security algorithm work. I may have forwarded her designs to some contacts. You said you wouldn't interfere. I said I wouldn't interfere without your permission. You were unconscious from exhaustion last night when I asked. You mumbled something that sounded like yes. Marcus wanted to be angry, but found he couldn't. Victoria had been nothing but generous, and Emma deserved every opportunity. Thank you, he said simply. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow we have a board meeting about the new security protocols. They're going to hate everything you're proposing. Good. If they're comfortable, they're vulnerable. That evening, as Emma set up her computers in her new room, Marcus walked the perimeter of the estate, mapping defensive positions out of habit. The property was well-designed, clear sight lines, minimal cover for potential attackers. State-of-the-art surveillance systems that Emma was already improving. His phone rang. Jake Morrison. How's the palace? Defensible. How's the rebuild? Your boss wasn't kidding about making it better. She's got contractors here around the clock. Also, I've got some intel you need to hear. Dimitri's back in Moscow, but he's not taking contracts. Word is he's out of the game. Because of our fight. Because of how you fought. The ghost becoming a warrior again, it impressed him. In his twisted way, he respects you now. Even put word out that anyone who takes a contract on you or yours will answer to him. Marcus felt a chill. Having Dmitry Volkov as an enemy was dangerous. Having him as a protector was almost worse. It meant owing a debt to chaos itself. There's more, Jake continued. The reckoning had deeper roots than we thought. David Chen was just the financial backer. The real leader is still out there. Who? Nobody knows. They go by the architect. FBI's working on it. But this person has been planning something bigger than just killing tech CEOs. Victoria was a test run. After the call, Marcus found Victoria in her home office working despite the late hour. We need to talk about the architect. She looked up and he saw she already knew. Agent Foster called an hour ago. They think the architect might be someone inside the tech industry, someone with access to all our data, our schedules, our vulnerabilities. Someone you know? In my world, Marcus, I know everyone and trust no one. It's how I've survived this long. She closed her laptop, rubbing tired eyes. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. The money, the power, the constant threat. What would you do if you walked away? I don't know. I've been Victoria Chen CEO for so long, I'm not sure who Victoria Chen person actually is anymore. She looked at him with unexpected vulnerability. Do you ever feel that way? Like you've played a role so long you've forgotten who you really are? Every day for 3 years, until that night at the restaurant when muscle memory kicked in and reminded me. And now I'm trying to figure out how to be both the warrior and the father, the protector and the human being who needs protection sometimes too. Victoria stood moving to the window where she could see the guest house lights. Emma's still up, probably hacking into Pentagon databases for fun. She's reviewing your corporate security footage from the last 6 months, actually, looking for patterns that might identify the architect. A 15-year-old is doing threat assessment for my billion-dollar company. A 15-year-old genius who inherited her mother's ability to see patterns and her father's understanding of threats. Victoria smiled. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She kept me human when I wanted to become nothing. The next morning's board meeting was as contentious as expected. 12 executives in $1,000 suits staring at Marcus like he was speaking a foreign language as he explained why their comfortable routines were now deadly vulnerabilities. You're asking us to completely restructure how we do business, complained Richard Steinberg, the CFO. Random meeting times, constantly changing locations, security details for everyone. I'm asking you to stay alive. Marcus interrupted. The reckoning targeted Victoria first, but they have files on all of you. The architect, whoever they are, has been studying your patterns for years. This is paranoia, another board member protested. Marcus pulled up the files Khalid had sent, displaying them on the conference room screen. This is your home address, Mr. Davidson. This is your wife's yoga schedule. This is the private school your children attend, including the exact route your driver takes every morning. The architect has all of this and more. The room went silent. Still think I'm paranoid? Victoria took control. Then her CEO persona fully engaged. We implement Marcus's recommendations immediately. No discussion, no compromise. Our lives versus our convenience, that's not a debate worth having. After the meeting, Marcus was reviewing security footage when Emma appeared at his office door, laptop in hand, face pale. Dad, I found something. She showed him the screen dozens of video clips from Victoria's office building over the past year, all showing the same person, a maintenance worker who appeared in the background of crucial moments, always watching, always recording with a hidden camera. Can you enhance the face? Emma's fingers flew over the keyboard. The image sharpened, resolved, and Marcus felt his blood freeze. Michael Patterson, Colonel James Patterson's son. The colonel who'd been Marcus's commanding officer before Baghdad, who'd called about reviewing his discharge. The son who'd blamed his father's suicide on Marcus's disgrace. Dad, you know him. Get Victoria, now, and call Agent Foster. But before Emma could move, the lights went out. Not just in Marcus's office, the entire estate plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. Marcus was already moving, weapon drawn, pushing Emma behind him. Security breach in sections 4 and 7, Chalk, the automated system announced. Multiple intruders detected. Marcus's radio crackled. Victoria's panic broke through. Marcus. They're in the house. The line went dead. Emma's safe room now. But Victoria, I'll get her. You lock yourself in and don't open for anyone but me. Understood. Emma nodded, already running. Marcus moved in the opposite direction toward the main house, every shadow a potential threat. His earpiece connected him to the security team chaos gunfire, someone screaming about gas in the east wing. The architect hadn't just planned an assassination. This was a full assault. Marcus entered through the kitchen, finding 2 of Victoria's security guards unconscious but breathing. Gas masks. The architect had learned from Dimitri's playbook. He pulled one off a guard securing it as he moved deeper into the house. Gunfire erupted from the upper floors. Marcus took the servants' stairs quieter and less expected. On the second floor, he found bodies not Victoria's security, but attackers taken down by someone who knew what they were doing. About time you showed up, Jake Morrison emerged from a doorway, rifle at ready. Thought you might need backup, so I was visiting when these assholes arrived. Victoria. Her panic room. But they're trying to breach it. Thompson and Williams are here too. We were having a reunion drink when everything went sideways. Together they moved toward Victoria's office, where her panic room was hidden. The hallway was a kill zone. 3 attackers down Thompson, standing over them with a satisfied expression. They really should have brought more guys, he said. The panic room door was damaged but holding. Marcus entered the override code and Victoria practically fell out gasping. Michael Patterson, she said immediately. He was here, Marcus, in my office. He said this was justice for his father, for you destroying his family's honor. Where is he now? He ran when your friend showed up, but Marcus, he has Emma's location. He said, her voice broke. He said you'd have to choose again, save me or save her. The tablet in Victoria's panic room activated, showing a video feed. Michael Patterson, older than his file photo, scarred and hollow-eyed, standing in what looked like the guest house. Hello, Marcus. By now you've realized your daughter isn't in the safe room. She never made it. My people intercepted her. She's unharmed for now. You have 10 minutes to come alone or she dies. 10 minutes to choose your principal or your daughter. Let's see what the great Marcus Riley chooses when it's his own blood on the line. The video ended. Marcus stood frozen, Baghdad crashing into the present. Another impossible choice, but this time it was Emma, his Emma. Go, Victoria said immediately. Save her. That's what he wants. You vulnerable me, distracted. I don't care what he wants. Emma is your daughter. Go. We'll handle security here, Jake said, already positioning Thompson and Williams. You save your girl. Marcus ran through the estate, his mind racing. Patterson was smart, using his tactical knowledge against him. But Patterson had made one mistake he'd learned from Dimitri's playbook without understanding Dimitri's honor. This wasn't professional. This was personal vengeance using professional tactics. The guest house looked normal from outside, no sign of intrusion. But Marcus knew better. He entered through Emma's window, the one she'd left cracked despite his security warnings because she liked the fresh air. Patterson's voice echoed from the living room. 5 minutes, Marcus. I can hear you trying to be clever. Marcus emerged, hands visible but ready. Patterson stood behind Emma, who was tied to a chair but alert, her eyes warning him of something. Let her go, Michael. Your issue is with me. My issue is with the system that let you destroy my father. He killed himself because of your disgrace. Did you know that the great Colonel Patterson couldn't live with the shame of his protege choosing wrong in Baghdad? Your father was a good man. My father was broken by your failure, and then you just disappeared, hidden away while he ate his gun. Patterson's hand shook, holding the weapon. But when I saw you on the news saving that rich bitch being called a hero again, I knew it was time. So you became the architect. You organized the reckoning. I gave angry people purpose, direction, showed them how to channel their rage effectively. He pressed the gun harder against Emma's head. But this was always about you. Emma's fingers were moving not randomly, but in the sign language Marcus had taught her years ago for emergencies. Window, sniper, Jake. Marcus kept his eyes on Patterson, trusting his daughter, trusting his team. You're right. I failed. Your father believed in me, and I let him down, but Emma has nothing to do with that. She has everything to do with it. She's your world just like my father was mine. Now you get to feel what I felt. The loss, the emptiness, the rage. Then take me instead. A life for a life. That's justice, isn't it? Patterson laughed bitterly. You still don't get it. I don't want you dead, Marcus. I want you destroyed. I want you to live knowing you failed to protect the one person who matters most. The window shattered. Patterson spun toward the sound exactly as Emma had predicted he would. Marcus moved, crossing the distance in a heartbeat, his hand closing on Patterson's wrist, forcing the gun up and away. The shot went into the ceiling as they struggled. Patterson was younger, stronger, but Marcus was fighting for Emma. They crashed into furniture, Patterson trying to bring the gun back down, Marcus trying to disarm him. Dad? Emma had freed herself, of course. She had. Marcus had taught her escape techniques since she was 10. She grabbed Marcus's backup weapon from his ankle holster, the one Patterson hadn't known about. Emma, no. But she wasn't aiming at Patterson. She fired into the floor at his feet, the shot so close they made him instinctively jump back. It was enough. Marcus twisted, threw Patterson over his shoulder, and brought him down hard. The gun skittered away. Jake and the others burst in, weapons drawn, but the fight was over. Patterson lay gasping on the floor, defeated not by violence, but by a 15-year-old girl who'd refused to be a victim. You okay, Em? Marcus asked, pulling his daughter close. I'm okay. He talked too much, gave me time to work the ropes loose. She looked down at Patterson with something like pity. He's just broken Dad. Like you were. Agent Foster arrived with a full FBI tactical team, taking Patterson into custody. He went quietly, all the fight drained from him, looking more like a lost boy than the mastermind who'd orchestrated months of terror. The reckoning is finished, Foster told them. Patterson was the linchpin. Without him, they're just angry individuals again. Victoria arrived, having refused to stay in the safe house any longer. She hugged Emma fiercely, then turned to Marcus. You didn't have to choose, she said softly. Emma made sure of that. She saw what I couldn't, that Patterson wanted me to suffer, not necessarily to kill. She created the distraction that let me act. I learned from the best, Emma said. Both of you. Victoria, you taught me about reading people's motivations in the business files you let me review. Dad, you taught me that sometimes the best defense is making your opponent make the first mistake. That night, after the FBI had gone and the estate was quiet again, Marcus found himself on the guest house porch with Victoria and Emma. The three of them wrapped in blankets against the cool air. I've been thinking, Victoria said, about what you said about not knowing who I am beyond the CEO. Maybe it's time to find out. What do you mean? I mean, maybe I step back from day-to-day operations, Focus on the foundation on using the wealth for something beyond just making more wealth. She looked at Emma. Your daughter suggested I fund a program for kids who've lost parents to violence, military, civilian, doesn't matter. Give them the chances they deserve. The Sarah Riley Foundation, Emma said quietly. If you're okay with that, Dad. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Your mother would have loved that. She would have loved all of this, Emma said. You protecting people, Victoria using her power for good, me getting to use my brain for something important. This is what she wanted for us to live, not just survive. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. Maria Santos, the journalist you saved. She wants to do a follow-up story, the real truth about Baghdad and everything after. Marcus tensed, but Emma put her hand on his arm. Tell it, Dad. The whole truth. Let people understand that heroes aren't perfect. They're just people who choose to act when action is needed. When did you become so wise? Marcus asked for what felt like the 100th time. When my dad stopped hiding his wisdom behind guilt, Emma replied. A month later, Marcus stood in Arlington National Cemetery placing flowers on Colonel Patterson's grave. The headstone was simple military standard, giving no hint of the complicated man beneath. Your son is getting help, Marcus said to the stone. Psychiatric treatment instead of just prison. He's broken, but maybe not beyond repair. I'll make sure he has what he needs to heal if he chooses to. He felt rather than heard someone approach. Helen Morrison, dressed in black, carrying her own flowers for her son's grave 2 rows over. Mr. Riley, she said softly. I heard about what happened. I'm sorry. So am I. For all of it. The choices we make, she said, looking at her son's headstone. They ripple out in ways we never expect. Your choice that night in Baghdad saved 3 children, but cost me mine. Patterson's choice to blame you cost him his life and broke his son. But your choice at that restaurant that started something different. Different how? You chose to act without knowing the outcome. You chose to protect without calculating the cost. Maybe that's what real heroism is, not making the right choice, but making a choice at all, when standing still would be easier. She placed her flowers and walked away, leaving Marcus alone with the dead in his thoughts. That evening, he returned to the estate to find Emma and Victoria in the main house's kitchen, attempting to cook dinner together with spectacularly messy results. Don't say a word, Victoria warned, flour in her hair and sauce on her designer shirt. We're making Mom's lasagna, Emma explained. From her recipe. Victoria said she wanted to learn to cook something real. I said I wanted to understand why your father looks peaceful when he cooks, Victoria corrected. It's harder than leveraged buyouts. Marcus laughed. Really laughed for the first time and longer than he could remember. He joined them, taking over the pasta making while they worked on the sauce, the 3 of them moving around each other with increasing comfort. Jake called, Emma said. His facility is rebuilt. He wants you to come teach a course on protective services. Share what you know with the next generation. And Agent Foster called, Victoria added. The FBI wants to consult with you on protection protocols for high-value targets. Apparently your methods with me have become the gold standard. Look at you, Emma said proudly. From ghost to guardian to teacher. Mom always said you had more to offer than just your trigger finger. As they sat down to eat their imperfect but heartfelt meal. Marcus looked at these 2 remarkable women who'd pulled him back from the abyss. Victoria, who'd given him purpose when he'd forgotten his worth. Emma, who'd never stopped believing in the father hiding beneath the guilt. To Sarah, Victoria said, raising her glass of wine. To Mom, Emma added, lifting her soda. To impossible choices, Marcus said, and the people who help us live with them. They clinked glasses, and for a moment Marcus could almost feel Sarah's presence, approving of this strange little family they'd formed from tragedy and triumph. Later, as Emma worked on her MIT application with Victoria's help, Marcus stood on the balcony looking out at the night. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown international number. The warrior has found peace. The ghost is truly buried. This is goodbye, Marcus Riley. May your choices always be clear, even when they're impossible. K. Marcus deleted the message and turned off his phone. The past would always be with him, Baghdad, the senator's son, all the choices made and unmade. But the future stretched ahead, full of possibility. Tomorrow he would teach Emma more defensive driving. He would review Victoria's security protocols for her foundation launch. He would visit Michael Patterson in the psychiatric facility, not with forgiveness, but with understanding. Tonight, though, he would simply be present. A father, a protector, a man who'd fallen as far as possible and chosen to rise. The ghost was gone. The Guardian had evolved into something more, a human being, who understood that sometimes the wrong choice was the only right one available, and that living with that paradox was what separated heroes from those who simply survived. Emma appeared beside him on the balcony. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah, Em, I really am." "Good, because Victoria's trying to make dessert now, and I think she might actually burn down the kitchen." They went inside together toward the smoke alarm that was just beginning to shriek toward Victoria's embarrassed laughter, toward a life that was messy and dangerous and absolutely worth living. The ghost of Marcus Riley was finally at rest. In his place stood a man who'd learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing a better future, one impossible decision at a time. And surrounded by the family he'd found in the most unexpected places, Marcus Riley chose to live, fully, completely, and without apology for the warrior he'd always been. The files on the reckoning were closed. The architect was in custody. Dmitry Volkov was a distant threat turned unlikely protector. But Marcus knew there would be other dangers, other choices, other moments when he'd have to decide who to save and who to let go. He was ready for them now. Not because he'd forgotten Baghdad, but because he'd learned to carry it without letting it carry him away. Sarah had been right in her final video. The war for good continued, and warriors sometimes lost battles. But Marcus Riley was still fighting, still choosing, still standing between the darkness and the light. And that he finally understood was enough.